Hello and welcome to Technado with Don Pizzette. I'm your host, Peter Van Rysdam, joined by Don Pizzette, who's in his office this week. Don, how you doing?
Yep, I'm reporting on location from, 200 feet away from the studio. But, we're winding down the year. We got some really big news to get to this week, but I know we've got an awesome guest lined up too, so it should be a good podcast.
Yeah, sounds good. And Daniel's back with us. Welcome back, Daniel. We kicked Wes out for you.
It's good to be back.
And you were out for a good reason, so congratulations on a new addition to the family.
That's right. We have given birth to the man-child of the family, and now I will have someone who will take his rightful place at my side one day to,
It was like 16 pounds.
put up. He was a large youngin', yeah.
All the ounces.
He was over 10 pounds.
It was like in the Godfather. They said, may your third child be a masculine child.
Yes.
And I already feel bad.
And he was.
I already feel bad for our guest today, Rohit Sethi, who is with Security Compass, because I believe you're in Canada, but we've already said feet and pounds and ounces. So Don is, I don't know,
He's 700 kilos or something. I don't know.
he's a milliliter away from us. And
Or is it the other way? He's like 1 kilo.
I don't know how this works. Yeah.
Don't feel bad. We happen to use feet and pounds, even though we're metric. It doesn't make any sense.
Take that, government.
Yeah. Yeah, I've seen that more, that like the signs are in kilometers in a lot of places, but they'll still say miles per hour for a lot of things in Europe, and
Or they're in French.
Yeah.
Are you in you're in Ottawa?
Toronto.
Toronto. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
English speaking side. Yeah.
Oh, good. Thank God. I don't know what I meant by that, but Rohit is the CEO of Security Compass, and so let's find out a little bit more about him, about the company, in our first segment, Rapid Fire Questions.
Who do you work for?
What's new?
Who are you?
What's happening?
What's wrong with you?
Justin was so much better at this than I am.
I
But all right, so in our segment, we're going to do 5 rapid-fire questions, or maybe 4, we'll see. And basically, you will have 1 minute to answer each one. If you take too long, at approximately 1 minute and 7 seconds, Peter will buzz. There we go.
That was early that time.
Yeah. And we'll move on to the next question. So it's supposed to be a quick chance to learn a little bit about you, and we will start today with Peter.
So let's start with Security Compass. So can you just kind of give us the elevator pitch, who you guys are?
Yep. Security Compass is a company that focuses on application security. We do that with our product, SD Elements. So we help bake security in from the start of the development process. We help training developers on application security. And we have a consultancy that is focused on things like penetration testing, cloud security, and other red team type work.
All right. Well, I was reading about your company and very interesting stuff. And I read that you guys developed the industry's first balanced development automation platform. Now, we're not but humble pirates here. And those are a lot of large words, my man. What exactly does that mean?
Right. So what it means is people who build software tend in what we see in the market, there's sort of 2 groups. The groups that prioritize time to market. And typically what they'll do is they'll build software and then they'll do some security testing, compliance reviews, that sort of thing. After software has been written, they'll try and find defects to fix, or maybe they won't fix them and they'll ship them to production. We call that fast and risky because you're not building security in and privacy in and compliance in by design. There's an alternative, which is what we call slow and safe, which is they do things like threat modeling, risk assessments, privacy by design, developer security training to integrate security in from the start. But doing so means that they slow their time to market. So that's slow and safe. And what we believe is that there's a need to prioritize time to market, but also integrate security and privacy and compliance in by design. And that's what we call balanced development. It's balancing speed and safety. And doing so with tool support is balanced development automation.
And here I was thinking that DevOps solved all that for us, and we didn't have to worry about it anymore, but I guess not. All right. Well, let me ask you a question. I know you have been with Security Compass for 15 years, and you rose up through the ranks to become CEO, and that is really, really rare. So I'm super curious about that because as somebody who works in technology, I know that being a CEO is a skill set that involves a ton of things well beyond technology, right? Like finance, accounting, and just management of personnel. So what was your story there? Like, how did you do that, moving from the rank and file all the way up to CEO?
Yeah, there's a little bit of backstory there in that I joined the company as the first full-time employee after Nish Bala, who was the founder. He was CEO, and I did different positions only because at the size of company, we needed different things to be done. So I started by managing a professional services firm. I ran into the product side when we decided to build a product and ran that. And then when we became big enough, I became COO. And I was doing that for a number of years, which is really very cross-functional. So my job hasn't changed significantly when I went from COO to CEO. I did have a number of years of experience, but there's obviously some things that are different when you become the CEO, including working with the board and working maybe more closely with sales and that sort of thing. But it's I've just had a lot of experience with the company, helping to run it more or less from the start.
See, that's way less exciting because I thought you'd like
Sorry.
murdered everyone on the way up.
It's like
to
Game
climb
of
the
Thrones.
rankings. Yeah.
Just a hit list.
There can only be
I wish it
one.
was
Yeah.
more exciting than that.
Yeah,
but
like you
it's
get their
sorry,
power. You get the power from each one, and then you
I just got here first.
Decapitating people is always fun.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, Mounties and stuff, how that works up there. But so I understand that you guys were involved in something really high profile in the news down here south of the border, the election in Georgia. You guys kind of did some pen testing or something with the recount. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, not so much that we were directly involved in the election, but that we did an assessment, security review of software used potentially in recounts. It's open source software, and it happened to be used in this election. And so the point was to get sort of assurance of the security of the product that was being used specifically for recounts.
I like don't take the blame. Don't blame us. We were not involved in the election at all.
I don't even know what an election is.
Yeah. I am curious, being a Canadian, it is a Canadian company, right? Or are you just in Canada?
No, it is a Canadian company. We do have a subsidiary in the U.S. and we have a number of employees in the U.S. as well.
So being a Canadian-held company, does that help or hinder you with being able to do security analysis and stuff here in the States?
I don't think it doesn't hinder us at all. I'm not sure it's a help per se. I think it's, in North America, you tend to see in the tech landscape, American companies working in Canada and Canadian companies working in the States all the time. So it hasn't really had a big impact for us.
I was just thinking in terms of the election, it's almost better. Like, here, get the Canadians
Like an
to look at it.
independent perspective. Yeah.
Although, I guess trade relations and all that would factor into it. So it's not totally independent.
But they're one of the countries we haven't sanctioned yet, I think.
I'm about to sanction you.
Did we go to war with Canada at some point? Like, isn't that one?
1812.
Yeah.
Once upon a time, yeah.
But they were pretty much British then still, right?
Yeah.
We probably were too.
I like what on House he said. You put the queen on your money, you're British.
That's true. Yeah, you're in the Commonwealth. She's on
Good point.
the loony and the toonie.
I feel loony.
Is that right? Are those things?
Yep, those are things though. These days, nobody's using cash, so it's
okay.
seem to be distant relics.
All right. Well,
Today we learned.
I'm still proud of myself. All right. Well, we want to get your take on something that we've talked about actually in the past here. So let's move on to our next segment, which is Deja News.
Deja News.
All right. So this article that we're looking at is about the IoT law that we talked about a few weeks ago. We talked about it being a potential thing, and now it is law. So this is the article we have is from Tech Republic. Cybersecurity experts hail the new IoT law. But what I'm curious about, Rohit, is when we've talked about it in the past, it seemed like it was really geared towards making regulations that the government in the U.S. would have to follow when purchasing IoT things. So is this something that impacts the end user, the customer, in terms of the security of their IoT devices at all?
Well, yeah, no, in an indirect way, yes. And so what I would say is like working with a gamut of companies in various industries, particularly in software security. What's interesting, and I think that a lot of people don't realize, is there's not a lot of regulation or even standards on product security, building secure products, building secure software. There's a lot on sort of, I'll say, cybersecurity, enterprise security, protecting your networks. But, people will be, I think, shocked to know how little emphasis there typically is in building secure products. And that's true of IoT devices. And so I think, what you're seeing here is a recognition that absent of some kind of regulation, and using the purchasing power of the federal government, it's unlikely that you're going to see really securely developed and baking security in sort of the entire process IoT devices, and really just sort of largely software in general. But the specific risk profile of IoT devices has meant that there's a lot of emphasis on making sure these things are secure. And I think by using their purchasing power, they're going to have an impact on the IoT providers, right? They're going to have to start to implement some minimum best practices from a security perspective, and that's going to benefit everybody who buys those same devices.
So I was excited when I heard you were going to be on the show because I wanted to get a second take on what my statement was. When we covered this article, I made the statement that I did not think it would be effective. And the main reason for it was the government was basically saying, we will not purchase products that don't meet a certain minimum standard. And so if somebody's an IoT vendor and they're manufacturing thermostats or whatever that are being sold to the U.S. government, then yeah, they're going to have to deploy secure development lifecycle. They're going to have to make sure that they are living up to those standards that the U.S. government has specified. And so those products will get better. But if I'm selling a product that doesn't go to the U.S. government, like the U.S. government is not buying Nest thermostats. So if Nest thermostats are just being sold to consumers, then this regulation doesn't really affect that company. And so I felt like it wasn't going to make a real difference to IoT in general. So would you say that's true or false, or it's somewhere in between? What's your take?
It's a good point. I mean, we're targeting a subsegment of the entire IoT world. What I would say, though, is every time that one of these standards or regulations passes, it creates implicit pressure in other areas to step up the game. And so I'll give you an example. Like, you have this particular law that's been passed. In the industrial IoT space, you have the ISA secure designation, which is sort of a seal of approval of the degree of security you've used to build an industrial control system. And that's starting to gain some traction. In the payment card industry space, you're starting to see the software security framework, where more and more parts of the payment ecosystem are requiring integration of security into the development process. And so at some point, you got to look over at medical devices and say, how come they're not being held to the same level of scrutiny? And then you look at, the nuclear industry and other like really high profile, really security sensitive industries and say, how much are they integrating security into the software development process? And I think that as the bar starts to raise across the board, it creates this implicit pressure on those places that are not covered. Right. And the other thing is that the manufacturers who create these devices, like maybe there's only some of them that are being purchased by the US federal government, but to the extent that they're integrating into their standard development process, it's easy for them to then extend it to everything else that they're doing. So we've seen in other industries where a subsegment of their product portfolio had to become more secure, and it creates an implicit pressure across the rest of the company to raise the bar. So I think you're right that it's not going to have a direct impact to the entire space right away, but it will over time. I'm confident of that.
I almost see this like GDPR too, where, if I'm a U.S. company, GDPR doesn't affect me directly, but I might say, well, if I have anyone that's going to be on using my system there, I've got to up these standards. So, it kind of has a ripple effect. Do you see this kind of as a starting ground for some more IoT regulation, or are there stricter regulations in other countries that maybe this is following?
Yeah, no, I'm not aware. I can't say there aren't. I'm not aware of stricter regulations for IoT devices. But what I would say is I agree. I think that this sets a precedent. I think other countries will step up when they see that this is happening. Because again, it's the implicit pressure. Like, doesn't every federal government care about this? And it'll eventually end up affecting many, many devices.
So it seems like part of the real issue here is that people don't understand that bringing in any device into a network could possibly be opening a security issue, right? So in your experience, I guess my question is going to be, how do you get people to understand you can't just go and buy something off a shelf and slap it in your network and go, this is cool, we should probably take security a little more seriously. And therefore, it's going to drive the market to become more secure. It's going to create that competition between the entities that are creating whatever products that people want to go, well, now my customers are demanding more secure devices. How do we get the customer to demand from the producers more secure IoT devices?
I think in the B2C space, it's unrealistic to expect consumers to have that understanding. I mean, it's easy to say, hey, we built it securely, and you can't really expect, you know, an individual consumer to say, oh yeah, I'm going to hold that to some degree of scrutiny. Now, the caveat I would say is that if at some point there's a widely understood accreditation of some kind that people had confidence in, you might start to see that evolve, and people will demand, just like the way I talked about ISA secure, you might start to see that sort of thing in the consumer space eventually. But I think a more realistic scenario, and part of the reason I'm so, you know, excited about this particular law, is both the government as well as the enterprise space, they do have that degree of sophistication. They do understand what it takes to build secure products, and they can hold the vendor more accountable. So I think they're the ones that are going to drive the change. I think it's difficult to expect an end customer to really understand the security implications of buying a product and knowing what risk you know, they're going to inherit by you know, just plugging it into.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I think it would be cool for us to, I say us, the royal us as a community, to create an entity that certifies this IoT device has security, you can trust it. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a government entity that does that. It could be a group that comes together. But that would be, I think, a really good step in the right
good
direction.
Housekeeping seal of approval.
There you go.
But I know if I was looking, you know, at 2 doorbells on the shelf at Best Buy, and this one had a stamp that said, you know, approved, and that's the only difference that I saw as a general consumer, I would still pick that one. So, so that's good. But I think what we'll do is maybe we'll come back, have you come back in a year, and either Don will apologize to you, or
I'll apologize. One of us
or
will
say
apologize.
nanny nanny boo boo or whatever. So we'll see what effect this has, and if it does, you know, eventually have a trickle down to other countries or regulation for the general public and not just government purchasing. So so if people want to find out more about Security Compass, what's the best way for them to go about that?
Well, certainly come to securitycompass.com. I would also, we also have a podcast where, you know, we're focused specifically on balance development and the sort of nature of balancing risk with time to market, and sort of, you know, talking about people who deal with that on a day-to-day basis, what kinds of challenges they run into and how they've gotten around it. So that's another thing you can do, is it's called the Balancing Act. You know, listen to that. But we're very much happy to engage. One thing I would say, you know, for anybody who's looking at things like developer training, we have, you know, developer security training, and you can go right to our website and learn more about that, and just implement it into, you know, your development process and train developers on security.
And I saw you guys recently won a Cybersecurity Breakthrough Award for application security. Was that for a specific, you know, case study or just in general?
Yeah, it was for the SD Elements product, the Balanced Development Automation platform we talked about. You know, we've been getting a lot of traction in growing that, and getting a lot of sort of the, you know, I'll say those top 10 sort of technology companies, top 10 or top 100, you know, banks, that sort of thing, who are kind of at the bleeding edge of integrating security and compliance into the development process and want to do so in a really automated way. You know, they've been helping to raise our profile. And, you know, I think that this award was recognition of some of the great things that we have done with our customers.
Fantastic. Well, I'll keep hitting refresh here, waiting for the invitation to be on your podcast. I haven't seen it yet, but
we'd be honored.
You'd want Don or Daniel. You would not want me.
I think they do.
Yeah, I think Peter volunteered.
I think we've got ourselves
Well,
a
let's
show.
get an idiot's perspective on this.
This will be
shall
comedy
we?
gold.
Yeah.
Hey, could you stop eating that crayon and weigh in on this?
I eat paste. Thank you.
I'm sorry.
Crayons are disgusting. All right. Well, Rohit, thank you so much for taking the time today. We appreciate having you on.
Thank you. Appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, and everybody stay tuned. We're going to take a quick break, come back with more Technado with Don Pizzette right after this.
The IT Pro TV app is available for iOS and tvOS. The modern user interface makes navigation easy. Recently watched videos can be found on the home screen, as well as our daily live streams. Choose Landscape mode for larger viewing. Access the entire course library by clicking on the play icon. Navigate our content by category, certification, and job role. Learn where you want and when you want as a premium annual member by downloading episodes for offline viewing. Watch on the go and pick up later on any of your favorite devices. So head to the App Store and download the IT Pro TV app.
Welcome back to Technado with Don Bazette, and thank you so much to Rohit Sethi for joining us and telling us all about Security Compass and a little bit more about that IoT law. So we'll see who is right at the end of the year. Not that there's just one right or wrong, because I agree, Don, I'm skeptical that that it changes anything, because we've seen how bad security's been on IoT. But
I suspect a year from now, neither of us has to apologize because it'll be the exact same as it is right now.
Yeah.
the U.S. government has to
Zero
apologize.
change.
Yeah. Like, our law sucks, and we're sorry that we wrote that law. Well, we've got a lot of other news to get to, so let's go ahead and jump right in with a big story this week from TheVerge.com. Gmail, YouTube, Google Docs, and other Google services hit by massive outage. Google says the problem should be fixed for most users now. And it's funny that most people are like, YouTube's down, but there's also a lot of companies that use Gmail for their entire business. So a lot of businesses were down too, as opposed to just not watching videos.
Well, not to mention like Google Analytics, which is used by practically every business. And we reported last week on AWS's outage, where AWS Kinesis had a tantrum, and basically it brought down the majority of people's ability to access AWS-based services, and all the companies that were using AWS were affected. Well, Google didn't want to be outdone, so they jumped in with theirs.
Hold my beer.
In their case, they had a quota system in place that would limit the amount of resources available to customers, and they accidentally applied it to their authentication servers. And so that restricted their authentication servers' ability to scale. And so while their servers didn't go down, they weren't accommodating scale. And so that meant the majority of users weren't able to authenticate. Now, unlike AWS, where there were still services that functioned, in Google, if you can't authenticate, that's it. Unless that service has a non-logged in experience like YouTube, most of the other services don't. You have to be logged in. So it was effectively a system-wide outage for most users. I think The Verge, somebody had a screenshot that showed Google's status page, and it's just red lights all the way down. Yeah. Versus AWS, where it was like 5 different services that were lit up. So this is a pretty big one. It didn't last that terribly long. I think it ended up being about 3.5 hours before everything was restored, but it was a pretty big deal.
So they basically DDoSed themselves.
In a way, yeah.
The most important question is, did they meet their SLA?
Well, I'm sure they defined their SLA, so if they didn't,
they rewrote it.
Well, like Don
you
said,
know what I mean, for like the people that are using their services.
They technically weren't down. It was just
right.
That you
could argue
couldn't
that.
get
Problem
to it.
here.
So, well, is this dumber than the AWS one? Which one is a stupider?
Which
move
one
here?
is dumber? Well, the AWS one was attributed to them trying to scale out Kinesis and not realizing the limited number of threads that they could have running on the Linux OS. In this case, it's accidentally applying a quota to a system that shouldn't have a quota. So I would say the Google one is actually dumber.
Didn't we have a Microsoft one a couple weeks ago as well? Where
It does
where
seem
Teams
like,
was down.
like Teams was down. Yeah. Man.
They're just
the big dogs are really bringing their A game this year. Huh?
Who is
That
next?
2020 is kicking some ass.
Well, the way I've leveraged this is, as somebody who runs a technology company or even a non-technology company, if you're an IT manager out there and you have a 2-hour outage and people are pressuring you, you can say, look, there's this multi-billion-dollar international organization called Google, and they had downtime, and look at all the resources they have. So we're not doing so bad. So it's a great way to get some justification.
Yeah, it is nice to be able to point to your betters and say, hey, if it's good for the goose, right, and then it must be good.
The best. So if you had limitless tech budget and access to the best staff available in the world, just PhDs everywhere you throw a stick, you hit one. Like that's what Google has.
Well, that's the
and
problem.
they had an outage.
Stop throwing sticks at the PhD.
Yeah, that's true.
Well,
Nobody likes getting hit.
If there is a silver lining to this, it's that it occurred at 6:55 a.m. Eastern time in the U.S. and it says the majority of users had the issue resolved at 7:52 a.m. So if we're talking about business and Google Classroom, that's a big one too right now with learning from home with COVID. Yeah, anybody West Coast Mountain Time, you probably weren't even aware that this was an issue. Europe, bigger issue for them.
You probably noticed.
Yeah. You probably noticed. We were waking up going, well, I got to watch some YouTube videos before work. No, that was your problem, but. Yeah, so we'll see. I don't know. Maybe between now and next week, Facebook will forget to renew their domain name or something, and we'll see what's next.
Somebody's going to grab that right out. Yeah.
I mean, it's not an article that we picked for this week because it's not too exciting, but Facebook has their own antitrust issues they're up against right now. That is turning into a giant mess. We'll see where that ends up.
That's not as much of a bonehead move as a power grab. But we'll see. Yeah.
They're gonna have downtime when they get broken up into Bell East and Bell West and
Fannie and Freddie. All right, let's go over to our next article from TechCrunch.com. Cloudflare and Apple design a new privacy-friendly internet protocol. So you can just do that? You can make your own internet protocol? Is that?
Yeah,
ain't nothing stopping you.
I didn't realize. How do you get people to use that internet protocol?
So anybody can make a protocol, right? You just draft an RFC. You can submit it to any number of organizations. The IEEE is one of the bigger ones. So you submit it to them, they pick it up, and then people can vote, nominate on it, try and get it to convert into a standard. Just because you create a protocol doesn't mean people will use it, and so it's not guaranteed to pick up. But because Apple and Cloudflare are behind this one, it's going to get picked up.
Yeah, it's all about like market going, oh, this is cool. We should use this.
Now, really, it's combining two ideas that are pre-existing, so they didn't really invent something too terribly new here. First, they're doing DNS lookups via a secure tunnel, right? So people have learned that even when you're using SSL and VPNs, that when you do a DNS lookup, you are telling DNS servers what websites you're going to. So if you're using your ISP's DNS servers, they know exactly what sites you're going to. Even though they don't know what you're sending, they know the sites that you've been to. So securing connections to the DNS server, that's one part. That stops middlemen from seeing where you're going. But the DNS server still knows. They can still pull the logs and know where you went because you had a secure connection that terminated on the DNS server. So they're proposing a new protocol, which they are called the Oblivious DNS over HTTPS, or ODOH,
It's Homer.
Homer's DNS protocol of choice, where it relies upon a relay. You build an encrypted session between you and a relay server that then sends it on to the DNS server. The data stays encrypted as it passes through the relay, so the relay can't read it. And the DNS server only sees the relay talking to it. So the DNS server doesn't know who sent the request. The relay server doesn't know what the request was. Only you know both pieces. So it gives you security and privacy.
So you were saying that if you are on a VPN and currently, when you're doing a DNS lookup, it can still see that information, to your ISP. In this case, even if you're not on VPN, is it still hidden in the secure tunnel?
So assuming that your system is set to use ODOH and assuming that your software isn't hard-coded to bypass it. There are some web browsers and other software, like Microsoft Windows. Microsoft Windows doesn't care what DNS servers you're configured with. When it comes time to do Windows updates, it does lookups against Microsoft's DNS servers to find the update servers. So, there's some cases where stuff is hard-coded. And in those scenarios, you'll have to use a transparent proxy or something to intercept that.
So is this something that, like a change that happens then at like an ISP level, where an ISP would have to say, all right, we're going to switch to use this DNS lookup? Or can I as an individual say, well, I'm going to change it, and anytime I'm doing a DNS lookup, it's going through the system from my machine?
So it's going to be up to you as an individual and the software you use. So whoever made your operating system or your web browser, whatever, they're going to have to decide to adopt that, and then you can enable it. ISPs don't want it, because ISPs resell that information. Even if they've anonymized it, right? Remove your PII from it. They sell that data of, here's how many of our customers went to CNN at this time versus that time, and they make money on it.
Yeah, they don't like you dipping in their pockets there, Peter.
Yeah.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but Firefox, is it that they have this kind of it's kind of built into their infrastructure, isn't it, or their browser?
I know Brave did it. Did Firefox
Brave
do it?
I want to say Firefox.
Not this particular one, not the ODOH.
Just the ability to work with this technology.
I think Firefox did. I know they did DNS over HTTPS, and they kind of made that their default. I don't think they've tapped into ODOH yet.
Gotcha.
All right. Well, just I guess take some time, get in the registry of your machine, and change all your code so you can do this. Right? Is that?
It's not in the registry.
No,
this will be like just change your. You just have to incorporate the technology.
Well, it's a little unclear right now. Like, do we have to stand up our own relay server? Or are there going to be publicly available relay servers? And if there's public relay servers, can you trust them?
Yeah.
Right?
It'll be kind of like a Tor for DNS proxying.
Yeah. So, Cloudflare, they have DNS service. You can use it right now. It's 4 ones, right? 1.1.1.1. But if you use it, now Cloudflare knows where you've been. And so if Cloudflare offers us a relay server, that doesn't help. You can't have one company have it all. So if Apple does a relay and Cloudflare has the DNS server, then maybe there's where you get your anonymization and trust. But maybe the Tor network picks it up. We'll have to see. It's all really new stuff.
But if this is developed by Apple, maybe we can expect to see a change in a future Mac OS that this is baked in. If this is how we do DNS searches.
That makes sense.
Certainly could happen.
Okay. All right, we'll keep an eye on that and see how that is adopted in the coming months. Yeah, I'm going to do it. I'm going to add it to my list of things to keep an eye on because I say that after every article.
He's just sitting at his desk staring at the computer screen going,
yeah, refresh.
Still nothing
Refresh.
really cooking on this.
I'm just assuming they'll put the update in the same article so I can just keep refreshing that page.
Every day, checking for that article update and
That's
waiting for
right.
Rohit's invitation.
I've got tons of tabs open here. Yeah. All right. Our next article is from cybercity.biz, which sounds made up,
Dun, dun, dun.
but that is real. Nixcraft is the website. CentOS Linux 8 will end in 2021 and shift focus to CentOS Stream. That's exciting. Don, you're the...
So,
let me just hit the peanuts.
I think, how
Got it.
sometimes I accuse sites of sensationalizing a headline. This one, what's the opposite of sensationalizing? Downplaying?
Downplaying, yeah.
Yeah, this is a big deal. It's a huge deal, and the headline doesn't really encapsulate it. But earlier this year, Red Hat announced that they were going to be doing a new release of CentOS. CentOS, if you're not familiar with it, is a community enterprise operating system. It's an open source repackaging of Red Hat Enterprise Linux. Well, Red Hat Enterprise Linux, or RHEL, costs money. You have to pay to run it. And CentOS is basically like a free version of it. You can run it, but you don't get support from Red Hat. And it's been like that for years and years and years. It really, well over a decade that you've had this choice. So basically a free version of RHEL. Well, Red Hat announced a new roll-up of CentOS called CentOS Stream. And CentOS Stream was going to be a little more cutting edge. Not as cutting edge as Fedora, but a little bit more. So it would have maybe some packages in it that weren't considered as stable or as secure as what's in actual Red Hat Enterprise Linux and CentOS. So that was interesting that they announced that. A lot of us wondered, hey, you've already got Fedora. Why do you need CentOS Stream? Well, now we found out. They came out and announced that that's it. They're not spending any more money or resources on CentOS Linux 8. And that means they're going to be moving it all over in January to CentOS Stream. And so they've effectively killed off CentOS. That's it. So CentOS 7 and earlier, they're already not developing on. They'll backport security fixes is what they've been doing. And CentOS 8 was supposed to be supported for like another 8 years. That's all gone now. So as of January, CentOS is effectively a unsupported operating system. And that's huge because hundreds, thousands of organizations, practically the entire Fortune 500, make use of CentOS in one form or another. A lot of third-party hardware you buy runs CentOS, and this is going to impact them in a significant way. So it's a huge deal.
Well, joke's on them. I'll just keep running CentOS 7, and it'll be fine, I'm sure.
That works until you need some updated library that's not supported on CentOS 7, or some security vulnerability is found and they don't backport a fix for it. That's the problem you run into.
Do you see this being like Windows 7 though, where Microsoft's all right, we're not supporting this anymore. All right, there's a huge security flaw. We'll go back and patch it.
I don't, and the reason is, and remember, IBM acquired Red Hat this year. And I'm sure they're looking at the revenue stream. And I don't know if I've talked about this in the podcast, but what some companies will do is they know that if they buy Red Hat Enterprise Linux, they can get support. But they can run CentOS for free with no support. So what they do is they build their staging environment with CentOS. With Red Hat. And then they build their production environment with CentOS. In their staging environment, maybe they only need 2 servers in a cluster. And so they buy Red Hat licenses for them. But then when they deploy in production, they do CentOS because they can scale out to 1,000 servers and not pay a dime. And when they have a problem, they can still call for support. It's kind of a way of cheating the system, and they don't pay as much as they should. So this is IBM's way of saying, no, if you want Red Hat stability, you're going to have to pay for it now. What I think will happen is most people will move to other distros, right? Oracle Linux is based off of Red Hat as well, very similar to CentOS, so you can do that. The original founder of CentOS has announced Rocky Linux, which is going to be his new Red Hat-based distro that he's releasing.
Does it have like a Stallone voice?
I don't know. That'd be really cool.
Yeah.
I am the law.
Spin up Linux.
The user interface will be called Adrian.
Yeah.
And so the founder of Cloud Linux announced they're creating one called Lennox, I think is what they're calling theirs. So anyhow, there's a couple of alternatives that will be coming out soon. Personally, I never trust new distros. So I think the big impact here is going to be more people moving over to Ubuntu.
Yeah.
I think it was Annie Linux.
What about SUSE? Are they still viable anymore? I mean,
they are.
They run in Europe a lot, don't they?
They do, and I never really understood that. SUSE is so popular in Europe and practically non-existent here in the U.S. I'm not sure why that is.
I'm going to go on record and say worst Stallone impression ever.
That's fine.
From Daniel.
Can I second that motion?
There are those people that everyone thinks they can do, like Christopher Walken, Stallone.
Dude, Chris
like
Walken
De Niro
is one of the most difficult.
Yeah. But everybody does it.
Yeah.
I put this watch.
Yeah.
Okay, there it was. That's amazing.
Comfortable hunk of metal.
Yes.
Yeah. Nailed it. And I'm sure our producers right now probably has not seen Pulp Fiction. They're saying, what are they even talking about?
They're like, what's a Pulp Fiction?
They have never seen any movies, those people. All right, let's move on to our next article over at cnet.com. Lock down your Microsoft 365 account to prevent spying eyes. Here's how. And it goes on to mention the U.S. government suffered a data breach after hackers targeted Microsoft Office software. And so they give 5 steps to protect your accounts, which honestly seem like the pretty common sense steps.
This was my first. I was like, oh, so do security.
Yeah, because I thought there's some new specific thing. Oh, do multi-factor.
Yeah, it's not, there's this cool tool that you download and it'll run, it'll do this and blah, blah. Nope, just security.
Oh, don't write down my password on a Post-it.
Yeah.
Got it. Number 3 is my favorite, too. Avoid phishing scams. Oh, because before, I was just answering all calls.
Yeah.
Replying
Before
to
I
all
was
emails.
seeking them out.
Yeah.
Did anybody need this password?
I've been buying Apple gift cards all day just waiting for somebody.
So you might ask yourself, why did I pick this article if it's so lame?
Yes.
The reason is one of the biggest attacks. Actually, I'm going to go as far as to say the biggest hack of the year occurred last week, and we're going to talk about it in a minute. But this was the precursor to it. So as people started realizing what was going on, it was originally thought that hackers were able to compromise Microsoft 365 accounts and then impersonate employees and do all sorts of crazy things. So Microsoft had to scramble a little bit and put out a notice to let people know, like, hey, you need to be securing your Microsoft account. And so they recommended 5 things, right? Set up multi-factor authentication, protect your password, again, pointless. Avoid phishing scams, pointless. Protect your apps, pointless. Make it easy to recover your
pointless.
account.
Is pointless the right word?
I guess pointless is not the right word.
It's
Just
just
common sense, stuff you should already be doing.
No duh.
Not
is
really
fine,
something
but
you can take action on. So the reason it was like this, though, is the problem actually ended up not being Microsoft. It came from a different vector, which I don't want to kind of ruin that one. We'll see here in a moment. But it is a kind of an eye-opener for people. You do need to be practicing basic security. And we joke about how these 5 things are common sense. Maybe they aren't. Maybe they aren't for you. If you're new to IT, these are things everybody should be doing.
And here's the thing. And actually, if you take a look at it and you really think about it, you go, oh, we deal with security stuff all the time, right? I teach security. We talk about security almost every podcast. So we're very familiar with these things. But these are the things that they're telling people will help keep you secure, right? From the largest, as Don put it, the largest hack of 2020. If you just do these things, it'll help keep you secure. That's what we've been trying to tell everybody. So like Don kind of was pointing out, maybe the word isn't out yet that if you do these simple things, you can keep yourself way out of the weeds and keep your data where it's supposed to be and not in the hands of somebody you don't want it.
Yeah. And when it said U.S. government here, is this the Treasury? Is that the issue we were talking about?
Well,
I mean, I know that that's part of the next story, too.
Yep.
I think,
And we'll talk about the scope of it in the next segment. Yep.
Well, let's just do it.
Let's go.
Because we've left you wondering enough, but you probably aren't because you're probably aware of this. So our next article is from ArsTechnica.com. And, most news agencies save their big story for the end, so we'll do that.
More news at 11.
Yeah, exactly. Are your kids safe? Premier security firm FireEye says it was breached by nation-state hackers. The FBI, normally mum on such matters, says it is investigating the hack. And so it sounds like FireEye thought that they had been breached, and in finding out where the breach was, found a bigger issue.
Yes, and that's a great way to summarize it right there, because in a way, it's fortunate that a cybersecurity firm got hit. So FireEye detected that unauthorized individuals had gained access to their network and had gained access to some of their red teaming tools they use to test and secure client networks. They did the responsible thing, so they immediately disclosed what happens. They let the public know. They also did something I thought was really cool, which is they took hashes of all of their red team tools and sent them to every antivirus vendor, so that the antivirus vendors could immediately list them in their definition updates, so the tools would be blocked from use pretty much everywhere. So that was a really cool thing for them to do. They handled it great. But as they started digging into it, being a cybersecurity firm, being somebody who deals with this every day, they knew exactly what to do. They started digging into it, and they figured out the vector that the attackers were able to use to get into the network. And once they figured out that vector, they traced it back and found out that this attack was way bigger than just them. So this was not targeted on Microsoft 365. This was not targeted on FireEye. In fact, the vector was Solarwinds. So Solarwinds is a company that makes network monitoring software. I've used them at literally every company I've worked at. I think it's a great product, the Solarwinds Network Performance Monitor. You can quickly deploy it and monitor bandwidth and uptime and network health, server health, all sorts of really cool things in a simple web UI. So it's a great tool a lot of us use. Well, the attackers, which have been traced back to, I believe it's the Cozy Bear group in Russia, it's always something bear, that they were able to compromise SolarWinds deployment servers. And they were able to basically build a malware or a backdoor of sorts into an update that was hosted from the SolarWinds servers that then pushed out to over 18,000 clients. And this is software designed to monitor your critical infrastructure, your servers, switches, routers, firewalls, and companies trust this software. And over 18,000 companies deployed this update. That means the attackers gained access to a ton of stuff, including the U.S. Treasury, NASA, and FireEye. This is the biggest attack of the year, maybe the decade.
So we found this out because of FireEye. Do we have any indication of how long they were in SolarWinds before this was discovered?
So they actually did put out a little timeline. The update that contained the malware was released between, it says it was available between March 2020 and June 2020. So that's like 3 months.
Yeah, that's a long time to be sitting there exfiltrating data or... I guess we don't really know what they were doing.
And actually, the numbers have been updated a little bit. It says they have 300,000 total customers. 33,000 were using. Oh, it says Orion. It used to be called Orion forever ago. Yeah. Now it's Network Performance Monitor. Now I don't know if I can trust this article or not. Well, no. Then it goes on to say that fewer than 18,000 are believed to have installed the malware-laced update. But it just shows here's software that you trust, and you apply an update, and it's already got an exploit baked into it. And in this case, it was a nation-state actor. And Daniel, you can probably speak better to this. These are some really talented people, right?
Well, excuse me. The fact that they were burning 0 days to get into these systems shows the level of sophistication that they had, and which is what it's pointing to them being APT. And FireEye monitors APT activity. They're always kind of updating the communities about what APTs are up to, which new ones have been discovered, and things of that nature to help the security community understand where they need to build fences against what APTs they need to worry about. So the fact that they were this article goes to say about how they were using techniques that they'd never seen before. It shows that no matter how big you are, it's just a matter of time if somebody with the right resources decides to target you. B, you never know what you're using, that your security may be amazing, but you basically bolt on a piece of unsecure software or hardware or something, and you're building in a door for them to slide through and gain access to it. and how far this gets to reach out because of them finding a 0-day vulnerability in a SolarWinds software. It's a very, like you were saying, super popular. So it was highly likely that they were going to get some high value targets out of this. So it was smart for them to go after that.
Yeah.
That's the kind of thing that we see at that state level. So, I mean, it's amazing to see. It's always like, wow, man, these are some smart individuals that come together and do these things. So you kind of admire that on one hand, and then you go, but they're real a-holes because of what they do with that knowledge.
Smart a-holes.
Well,
Yeah.
see, I always have a debate on this one because, are they a-holes really? Like,
It's true. The perspective.
So, obviously, if you're in any war, both sides think they're on the right. And so if I was a Russian citizen and, doing this to the Russian government, then I wouldn't necessarily think that was a bad thing. I'm doing my duty. I try and envision what it's like for these people, and we have no real idea. We don't know where these people necessarily are. We're being told that it's the Russians, but we don't actually know that. But I was thinking, like, imagine, Daniel, Peter, put yourself in their shoes. You're working in your war room, and oh man, you just found a way into SolarWinds network, right? And you realize the scope of that. Like, companies that have limitless security budgets will set up out-of-band network management, a special network just for their management tools. You just gained access to that. For all of these customers, like, Daniel, you mentioned holding 0 days, right?
Yeah.
So they'd probably say, oh my God, I just got to break where it says
champagne,
break glass in case of fire. Like, this is it.
Yeah.
Break out those 0 days. We're using them all.
Yeah, we're about to burn it down.
There's literally no better target. This is the best.
This is the unicorn that you're looking for.
Yeah, this is the chance to get my family out of the gulag.
Yeah. They
And-
probably went nuts and broke out every tool and rolled out every stop
Right.
because they knew once they were in those networks, they could get even more, get
Right.
even better, and just go crazy.
Yeah, it was a fire sale.
This was probably Christmas. Well, I was about to say Christmas in July. It's December, so it's Christmas.
But we know this was earlier. This was months ago.
Oh, it's Christmas in May.
I got a question for you, Don. Daniel and I were talking before the show, and I want to get your opinion on this. It might be a semantics issue, but to me, when I've seen a few articles that say there was a backdoor that was found, and to me, a backdoor is something that's coded in intentionally into a software to let the person who wrote it get back in after the fact. Is that just semantics here, and we're not necessarily using that word right in some of these articles? Or, I mean, we don't, we're not saying that SolarWinds was in any way, had this intentional backdoor written in.
Oh, right. Yeah. So it is extremely unlikely that SolarWinds was implicit in this, right? I mean, it's certainly possible. There could have been an insider in SolarWinds. Like, when you're talking about a state hacking group, it would not be unheard of.
Nothing is off the table.
Yeah, they could have a family of agents, like in the TV shows, living here in the U.S., and they have a kid who grows up entirely here in the U.S., who goes to work for SolarWinds, after 30 years and becomes CEO and then puts the back door in.
So this is more like if someone put a bulldozer through the back of my house, they wouldn't say, "Hey, we've made a back door and now we've come in." I mean that's more what this is that somebody infiltrated the house, but
and
I guess it's a door now.
Something like this happened a year ago where attackers got access to a GitHub repository, and so they just put the back door into the GitHub repo. And then the actual employees just built the code from GitHub. They digitally signed it, and it was distributed. When that software would run, it would phone home to these servers.
I guess if you're thinking of like how they used SolarWinds to gain access to FireEye, where they had,
I guess that's a backdoor.
They're saying that SolarWinds is effectively a backdoor into FireEye.
SolarWinds is the backdoor. It's not a backdoor.
Maybe
in
that's how they're
SolarWinds.
using it. I'm trying.
It could be.
Yeah.
Give them credit.
Think like maybe you've got a secure network at home. And you have
Just not true.
And you have a cleaning lady or a nanny or somebody that comes by every so often, and you allow them to
Let's
use
say
your
her
Wi-Fi
name's
network.
Natasha.
There we go. Well, an attacker, instead of targeting you directly, could target the cell phone of the cleaning service or target the laptop used by the nanny. And so when they come into your network, now their device is phoning home. It's not that that person was involved in the attack, but they became that vector, and they're effectively leaving the door unlocked.
Right.
Yeah, that makes sense because FireEye did put this software on their systems knowingly, but not knowing that there was.
Man, 0
a
days
hole
are
in that.
fun.
Yeah,
Yeah.
super fun.
Yeah.
And how many of us go through and do like full security auditing and testing of every update that comes out for software we use on our network.
Never done it.
It's a rare thing.
I am shocked.
Never even read release notes.
Yeah.
What's
a
I've read
security
sometimes where it just
update?
says fixed bugs.
Yeah.
Read more. I'm like, yep, fixed bugs.
I'm not putting that in.
Got it. Nailed it. All right. Well, yeah, that is a big story, and one I'm certain we will be talking about into 2021 as we look back at what happened and what we can learn from it.
Yeah, this story broke, I believe, 3 days ago, and updates have been coming out practically hourly since then. This one's big.
We should do one of those autopsies on it.
Oh, I should mention, if you are running SolarWinds Network Performance Monitor, if you're running SolarWinds Orion, you should have updated anyway because that's ancient. But if you're running Network Performance Monitor and you did an update between March and June, which you should have, then that means you are vulnerable. And so you need to make sure you're updating. If you have stolen SolarWinds software, which I do know some people do, that's a bad idea.
Get what you got coming.
And yes, that is exactly what's going to happen. So definitely make sure you've patched and updated.
There you go, karma. All right, want to let you know about a couple of things. We're done with our webinars for 2020, but we have a fun one coming up for 2021. Our first one is going to be the top search to get you started for the career changers of 2021. It's kind of one of those New Year's resolutions things, and it's going to be taking place on January 14th, 2021 at 2 p.m. Eastern Time, and that's with Network Chuck. Who is a good friend of ours, so a big YouTube personality. You've probably heard of Network Chuck, so he's going to be joining us for that one. Again, that is on the 14th of January, and you can head over to itpro.tv/webinars to register for that one, and as well as seeing all the past webinars. Just had one last week on vSphere 7 that Adam Gordon did about the new release from VMware, so check that out as well.
Or you might know Network Chuck from his coffee brand.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, very big in the coffee space.
It's true. I don't know if there'd be a lot of crossover of coffee people wanting to learn about. Well, you
never know.
Into coffee, you want to get your new.
Never know.
There's an opening at SolarWinds on the security team.
See, that's a double entendre because there's an opening in SolarWinds software and
I see.
See how
I
that
did
works?
that. I did it intentionally.
That is
to,
it.
yeah.
Totally meant to. Hey, while you're on that internet, head over to go.itpro.tv/Technado. You can get a 30% off coupon code for the lifetime of your subscription for your personal plan, and you can also request information for a team. We've got volume pricing for teams of 2 and up, so go ahead and head over to go.itpro.tv/Technado. Find out all about that as you are working towards that new IT career in 2021. That is a great place to start. All right, gentlemen. Well, the next couple weeks are going to be some fun ones. We're kind of in the in-between times. Didn't want to necessarily schedule guests, so we're going to do some fun look-backs, predictions for next year, maybe a little game. So get excited about that. Any closing thoughts, anybody? Perfect. Great to have you back, Daniel. It's like this is just like in a Zoom meeting when it freezes. Like, did you guys hear any of that I just said?
Yeah.
All right, fair enough. I appreciate it. All right, everybody. Stay tuned for next week, but that's going to do it for us today. So we'll see you next time on Technado with Don Pizzette.